Hi, everybody. I thought while I had a little time over the break, I'd go through the current Rhino project M3A3, the Healing Garden, and take a look at maybe how this might work if we approach it. Again, there's lots of ways to approach any modeling exercise. That's one of the things I hope you get. It's one of my fears of the majority of you wanting to get a set of steps, and clearly that helps you work through something. But the fact is, there are logical, rational steps to solving problems, but there's more than one set of steps. Hopefully you've seen that. There's lots of different ways to approach this, and different people have different preferences, and it doesn't mean one is right and one is wrong. And every time I do a model, I discover something else, and I realize, hey, that would be a better way to do it. But I never look at a set of steps as the end of learning that software. It's just the beginning of that. And if you don't understand that, if you don't see it that way, you'll never learn anything else about software as you use it over the years. And the fact is, the software changes. Next year, Rhino will be different. SketchUp will be different. There's new tools, there's different ways of doing things, and you really need to learn to pay attention to how you approach something, how well it works, what's good, what's bad, and how new tools excuse me, how new tools can fit into that process. So I'm going to kind of take a parallel path to how we approach this in SketchUp and show you how that same process can really work pretty well in Rhino. Again, it's just a different way to approach it, and it was kind of instructive to me to kind of go through that and think about it in the same way. Tools are different, approaches are different, and so pay attention to that. Some things are easier, some things are harder. Some things are more accurate, some things are less accurate. It just depends on the tool and the process. So I'm going to follow through that same thing as I go through building this model. So the first thing I do want to mention too is I'm going back and using the same AutoCAD files that we used for the SketchUp model. We already went through that W block process. And basically that takes a more complicated AutoCAD file, which is what you're always going to be working with, and you pull out the pieces that you need. Now, Rhino actually is really good at handling AutoCAD files with full layers and everything, so you could just bring the whole Healing Garden AutoCAD file in here and use it, but you have to go through and manipulate more layers. But having some of those layers actually helpful to be able to turn things off and on. So I'm going to go through and use those same W block files. I also noticed the other file we were using in class the other day, I was having some issues with certain operations not working on that file, whereas when I opened the original SketchUp model AutoCAD file that we used, I wasn't having the same problem. So again, it's just one of those things. Things happen. And yeah, even just for the record and going through the process of doing this, I probably did the SketchUp model 5 times and never had SketchUp crash even once on me. I've done this project 5 times and Rhino's crashed or hung up twice at least on me. So it really is important to understand comparing apples and apples, not, you're doing one process in SketchUp and something different in Rhino, and one works better at the time and one doesn't. You can't assume that that means those tools, one's better than the other or works better or whatever. It just, if you start comparing them the same way, you'll see how those things function. So anyway, let's start with that. So I've already got these files put together. I'm just going to go to my hardscape and topo. I put those together since the topo comes in. Just going to use the default settings. And there we go. I'm going to my perspective. Now this is where I'm going to show you one little variation. If I just select these contours, and we're going to use a patch tool, I'm going to leave this at kind of default settings 1. Might even make this 60 and 60. And I think this is set at 1 also. And do a preview. So it's going to think through this, work out the terrain. Okay, now one of the things you'll notice here is that, in fact, I'm just going to click OK. And let's go to rendered view so we can shaded view. Now, if you do that in the default settings with the patch tool, okay, this is something you just have to recognize and admit. Now we can improve this a little bit, but that terrain model stinks. It is not very good. It's completely inaccurate. It's got all these undulations and things, and it just has to do with the nature of how the patch tool works. Topo Shaper in SketchUp is designed to create terrain models of sites, of building sites. That's what it was designed to do. The patch tool is not designed to do that. Rhino was designed to do industrial design, cars, boats. shampoo bottles, cell phones. It was designed to create objects, and it uses NURBS to do that, and it's very good at it. But it wasn't designed with site planning in mind. It's been adopted by architecture, and now a lot of landscape architects are adopting it. Although I'll mention this again in class, but just got a grainy photo from our department head at the last national ASLA convention, and it was a session where they did a survey on software usage in firms in the United States, landscape architecture firms, and SketchUp is #1 on the list. 97.4% of firms use it. So whether you like SketchUp or not, you need to learn to use it, and you need to learn to use it the right way. Rhino was pretty far down the list at 21% of firms, and above that you had 3D Studio, AutoCAD, which has 3D in it, several other programs. So Revit was another one that was up there. So, you know, Rhino is used, but it's used by less than 1/4 of the firms in the country. So it's a great tool. I'm going to keep exploring some of the opportunities and ways you can use it, and I'm looking forward to that. But, you know, SketchUp is out there, and it's prevalent at this point, and it will be in your career. So having to just learning to use Rhino, you're going to end up in a firm and they're going to ask you to do something in SketchUp, and you need to know how to do it. So keep that in mind. So anyway, that's one difference between this. Now, one of the ways you can get around this is by adjusting some settings. So I'm going to do a Control-Z and undo that. Now, what I'm going to do in this case, this is a tip I saw online in tutorials, I'm going to select these and turn the control points on. Okay, so now I have the contour lines, but I also have the control points. Then I'm going to go to the Select tab up here and choose Select Points. Now, instead of selecting the contour lines themselves, I'm actually selecting the control points. And the patch tool will work on control points just like lines. So here I'm going to adjust the sample spacing down to 0.5. I'm going to adjust the stiffness up to 10. That actually smooths out some of those big variations that happen because the way it interprets where those contour lines are. I'm going to do a preview. And now if you look in here, you can see that it's much smoother, much closer, and more accurate to what the terrain is supposed to look like. So both the size of the grid and the use of the control points and changing a couple settings up here can really help that. So I'm going to go through that, and actually I'm going to just delete the contours when I'm done because I don't really need to see them anymore, and Rhino can generate new contours if I want them to show up, and they look better than those anyway. Okay, so I've got the terrain model built. The next thing I want to do is trim that to fit, and then I'm going to map an image onto it. And essentially I'm taking you through that same process. You could start splitting this up right now, but then if you have to adjust this, because this is better, but it's still not perfect. The stairs aren't going to fit. Things aren't going to be mapped on, aren't going to adjust to the walls the way you want them to. And if you split it, then you have two surfaces you have to move up and down and try and match them. That's not easy in SketchUp, and it's not easy in Rhino either. So it's much more efficient to put the elements that you need in, like steps and walls, and adjust the surface of this terrain to fit those. And then once you've done that, then you can split it into the pieces and apply the materials. The other thing that's really helpful in doing that, since not everything, the walls and the stairs are defined, but where those paved surfaces, where the water feature and the seating area is, I can do that with an image map just like we did in SketchUp. But before I do that, I need to trim this down. And to make this work a little bit better, before I do that, I'm going to select, and you'll notice over here, if I click up here, I'll get a line segment because there's an overlapping one with the building. If I click down here, I'll get the entire site boundary, and that's the one I want. Same thing here, I'll get the entire site boundary. If you click over here, you're gonna get little short segments. So click on all those and let's just join those together. All right, this just makes the trim process easier. All right, now I'm going to do the trim. I'm going to select the cutting objects, click down here, that's what I want, enter, click on this, and there we go. It just trimmed it down to match that. Okay, so now I've got my terrain model trimmed to the site plan, and now I'm going to map an image, that site plan image onto it so I can use it as a reference. So I'm going to go to my object, to my material, display by object, and I'm not going to assign a material to it. All I'm going to do is create a material by assigning a texture to it. So I'm going to click on this, and I have, this is the same image that, that I used that we supplied for you for the SketchUp model, so you can use the same one. Just remember that it's trimmed down right to the edges, and even though there's a point here, it's trimmed right to that point, and that way it'll map onto this correctly. Okay, select that, click OK or open. Now I can't see it, but if I go to my rendered view, right, I can see that there, and I can see that it doesn't really fit. Another thing you can do, if you want to be able to have most of your model displayed in shaded view, so you can see the edges, you can type a command. I think it's okay, set object display mode. Rhino will actually let you assign a display mode to an individual object, which is kind of cool. So I can say, I'm going to select display mode, I'm going to select the object, I'm going to click on that where it says use view. I click on that and I get another menu, use view. I'm going to choose rendered. So now even if I set this to shaded, or even if I set this to wireframe, this always displays with that image on it, which is, again, like I said, so you can keep it at shaded for most of the work, but this will still display in the rendered mode. Okay, so now I need to fix this by changing the mapping system. So I'm going to go to my mapping, texture mapping icon. I'm going to assign planar mapping, and then I can actually use the command line here to go through and set this up so it lines up perfectly. So instead of drawing a bounding box, I can actually use the bounding box of the object itself. So I'm going to choose bounding box. I want to use the world coordinates, and I'm going to use UVW, which is basically like U is X, V is like Y, and W is Z. So it's just another set of 3 letters that correspond to the XYZ coordinate system. The use of a different set of letters allows you to map images differently than geometry, and sometimes that's really useful. Okay, as soon as I click on that, now you can see it lined it up perfectly. There's the edge, right out there at the edge, and you can see now that the terrain surface here, where the wall is going to go, we can look at where the stairs are here, that needs to be adjusted, and this little seating area, which is still sloping down a little bit. So those are the 3 areas I'm going to adjust first. And I'll start with a new command that allows us to adjust these 2 areas, the circle and this, really quickly. Then we're going to drop the walls and a set of steps in here and show you how we can add some other control points in to help us adjust those pretty quickly as well. And once we've got all the terrain adjusted, then we go through the split process in order to apply different texture or different materials to different surfaces. So the first thing I want to do to fix this is turn the points on, okay? And this isn't necessary, but I don't know, I just like it cleaned up a bit. It's still showing us control points for the entire object because you can actually untrim something in Rhino, so it remembers that. So I'm going to do the shrink trimmed surface command, enter, choose my surface, enter, and you can see it just pulled those control points in so they're a little tighter on the boundary. It's not necessary, but I find it less distracting. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is adjust this area so it's basically level. Now, I think in class we showed that you could build a 3D object and drop it in there, which you can, and that's perfectly legitimate. But since this ties into a walkway and some other things, I'm going to use a little different method just to allow us, kind of like what we did in SketchUp, the drape command we do when we split, but I went through and used the make planar command in Artisan. This is a kind of a similar function that uses the control points within a surface in Rhino. So to start with then, I need to select the points that I want, and I'm kind of let's see, right? Basically want the ones next to the wall here. I don't know if I want those or not. Probably not. I'll fix those later. Let's do it this way because I'm going to show you how we can add some more of these control points in. I don't want to get too far down here. This one's okay. Maybe control click on that. I don't really need that one. I like this corner, but not that one. So basically I've got the area that I want to kind of keep level. And I'm going to type set point, enter. And by default, these will be checked X, Y, Z. It'll line everything up to all the same coordinate. In this case, I don't want that. I just want the Z. That's the only thing I want to set. So make sure X, set Y are off. Now, what it's going to do here is it's keep snapping down to the construction plane. That's why it's giving those lines going way down. And you do want to have the grid snap on for this. What I'm going to do is move over here kind of out to the edge of the road, because that's kind of the point where we want this to snap up to. So I'm just moving over till I get the surface lined up, maybe right in there. Click. And now you can see it's kind of set that up. Now that might be a little too high because I can see this walkway is really sloping up. If that's the case, I can now disable that. Now that I have them set, I can pull that down a little bit more. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I still have a slope there, and I can always, if I feel like that's sloping down, then I can grab one point and just pull that up a little bit. And I'll add some other points in there so we can make some other adjustments. But that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll even undo that for now, because we'll do that when we put some other adjustment control points in. Okay, so I just leveled that out really quick. And I can go back. I still have to fix this edge a little bit for the wall, and out here you can see that's drooping over a little bit, but we'll fix that in a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to come over here now, and I can do the same thing. Only in this case, I'm just going to manually pick these points. Okay, I think I'll just start with those. I'm not going to pick these out here. I'll get that one though. Okay, same thing. Set point. Okay. Now I'm going to turn my snap back on, otherwise this goes down to the construction plane. There we go, and that looks pretty good too, right? Oh, I missed one there. So if you miss one like that, do a Control Shift, pull that up there, and just make a little adjustment to get that to fit. And now this case, I kind of would like to have another one here. Now maybe I can adjust that up just a little bit. I don't want to get too far down into where that retention area is, but I'll just adjust that up a little bit. Okay. There we go. All right, maybe I'll take that one back down a little bit more. Okay, for that, I'll disable my object snap. There we go. Okay, so just a few adjustments with those. And again, if you find one's a little too high in there, you have to look at the surface, because again, that control point is not on the surface in that case. So if you really want to look at it, I can right click, turn that off, and if it looks pretty level, again, the boulders are going to be in here, they can pick up some of that slope right there. Looks pretty good. And actually does slope down a little bit over there. Okay, so that's a quick way. You use those show control points and you select them, use the set point to kind of create a level pad, and then you go in and manually adjust them a little bit if you need to. Now in this case, I still need to accommodate this wall in here. And so before I drop that in, I'm actually going to turn the show points back on. And what it would really be nice to have is a set of control points on this, just inside this side of the wall, and one just along the wall here. So I could have the wall at the proper height for the upper side here, and then I can take this set and drop it down and get the wall for the second height. Now I can move these over, then that kind of creates problems on the grid for me. And same thing here on the other side. I really would like to have a set of control points on both sides. So you can actually do that pretty easily if you use Insert Not command. So I'm going to select the surface, and you can see it's giving me an ISO line, a control point line that goes all the way across. So I'm going to set one right here, and I'm going to set one right here kind of inside. And then I can go up and just say toggle, and now it's giving me the other direction. So I'm going to set one on my inside there. Set one just on the inside there. And I think for now, I'm going to right click and adjust that. So yeah, I can take, so now I can take these lines. Again, I'm going to control click to deselect that one. I know I don't want both these going all the way down, but see, I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to move both of those down. Snaps are disabled. Okay, that's probably about far enough. Again, I could check the dimension. I'm just kind of eyeballing it in here for right now. And that's kept the other ones up pretty tight. And I still have this set right here, which I need to adjust. But again, I can go through here now. And grab those and just flow those down a little bit. Okay, so now I've got that landform adjusted. And once I place the wall in there, I'm not sure that's quite going to be quite within the wall, but if that's the case, I will select this group of control points and move them into the wall. But I'll wait till I drop the wall in. And you can see I've got a little cleanup work to do here. But again, I can select these. Just move those down a little bit. And until I get the other ones in there, again, I'm going to, in this case, these I'm actually going to pull those up a little bit because I want those to be kind of level with the outside edge. And I can come in here and do the same thing with this. There we go, kind of level that out in there. So again, I'm kind of keeping that right level within the wall, and this kind of slopes down along the edge like it's supposed to. I can grab that one, pull that down a bit, grab this one, pull it down a bit. Okay, so that's starting to look like the wall is supposed to look in there. It looks pretty smooth across here. I can always do some other, if I feel like this one here needs a little adjustment to balance that out where the ramp is there. I can pull that up a bit. That doesn't look too bad. There's another one in here. So I'll come back to that at the end, but that looks pretty good. And if I want to kind of verify that, I'm going to right click. I'll get rid of that. And now let's just go ahead and jump ahead before I work on the other. It's basically adjusting for the steps here and here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll add any other, I'll do an insert knot to add any more control points that I need. And I'll get to this in this tutorial, but we're just going to do it one step at a time. But in order to see how what we did just worked, I'm going to go up to import, and I'm going to choose my walls and steps. Now, one of the things, once this comes in here, I'm going to actually pull it out of there because I want that separate later on. And I don't really need that or that. I'm going to select that and make a surface out of it. And then I'm going to extrude that surface. Again, just give me enough height to adjust it. And now I'm going to move that up. And again, you can verify all the heights and kind of eyeball on this. I've modeled enough times to kind of have a pretty good idea of what it should look like. And actually, that looks pretty good. I mean, maybe this is coming down a little too steep. I think it is at that corner, but you know, the wall kind of slopes up just a bit there. When I put the building in, it'll hide this part. So that's pretty clean. It looks pretty smooth there. Although maybe this is still a little low here. Or maybe the wall's a tad high. So I'm going to just bring that down a bit. Okay. Yeah. And then if I want to bring this up a little bit, I can always make that adjustment. Again, I'm not going to go back and refine this right now. Maybe I'll do one or two or something. Just turn the points on. One of the things you can also do, since this for right now, that is, I'm going to lock that. And that way I can come in here and grab a control point. If I have to, I can kind of come underneath here, see these couple points. It's actually one of the things, it's kind of a, it's one of the things that's a little different about Rhino, in that the control points aren't always visible on the surface. So sometimes you have to flip underneath. But anyway, that's starting to get a little more like it's supposed to look like. So don't be afraid to go underneath, figure out. It's another reason to have the image on there. You can kind of tell what control points you have to work with even from underneath the model. All right, I'll turn those back off for a second. And we've got the wall in there. It's locked down, and we can select around it. Now, eventually, we're going to split this wall to put the stairs in here. Maybe I'll build the stairs real quick. And let's do it. I'll do unlock. Okay, so now we've got that unlocked. One of the things we'll do eventually with this, and I think this is a case where I'm not going to split it yet, so I'm not going to break this up. I'm going to leave this. We know this wall has a break in it to allow this walkway to come through and the boulders in there, and we can demonstrate another method to do that. It might even be in a second video. I don't know if I'll keep going that far in this one, but actually it's a cool way of kind of a wire cut to go through and slice that out. But for right now, I'm going to keep it as one piece. So eventually we can split this object and have these in separate pieces. The wall is a good mechanism to do that. Okay, let's drop the stairs in there and see how close we are with that. So I'm going to zoom back in here. I'm going to select that. For right now, I don't really need these, but I'm going to select those two. I'm just going to group them, and then I'm going to hide them just to get them out of the way. And now I'm going to make a surface from these, and I don't think it's actually same issue sometimes with zooming problems in Rhino that you get in SketchUp. It just kind of locks up. Okay, so now that I have this done, I also want to split that. So I'm going to select that surface, right click, and it says cutting objects. That, right click. And so now I can go in, stop doing that, and I can pull these up. So I'm going to use the extrude surface command, click, pull it up, 0.5 for the first one, right click, click, right click, pull it up, 1, enter, right click, select, right click, pull it up, 1.5, right click, select, right click, pull it up, 2, right click, select, right click, pull it up, 2.5, right click, select, right click, pull it in positive direction, 3, right click, select, right click, pull it up, 3.5, right click, select, right click, pull it up, 4, right click, select, right click, extrude it, 4.5, right click, select, right click, pull it in positive, 5, right click, pull it up, 5.5, enter, right click, select, right click, pull it up, and 6, enter. Okay, and now just to make this a little easier, I'm going to select all that and make that a group, and I'm going to pull that up. Move around here a little bit. Whoa, hello. And again, I'm trying to position that so that it's about, so I'm going to turn my snaps back on. That looks pretty good. And I'm looking at this area, I'm trying to kind of get that connected across there. So it sits up about that height, and then I can adjust the terrain here to match that. And I'm going to draw some other ISO curves in to do that, or some other control points. So that's not actually too bad right there, right? I'm floating off the ground a little bit, but it looks like it's about the right height there. So now I can go in and start making some adjustments. And again, I'm going to turn the control points on. And I think what I'm going to do to make this a little easier as well is to go ahead and add some other knots in there. So where's my insert knot? So I'm going to come in here where the stairs come through, because those are areas that I want to control, all right? Then I'm going to toggle, and I'm going to bring it right along the front of the steps. That might be enough. And I'm going to come down here, that corner, kind of this corner, and enter a right click. So I'm just trying to come in here and make sure. And now I'm going to select that and this and do the lock command, because again, it just makes it easier. I can come in here and select these points, because I know somewhere in here there we go. So I've got a point right there. I can start pulling this up. I'm just looking at the top surface there. I know somewhere in there there's a point, so I'm going to pull that up, connect that in. Actually looks fairly well lined up. I'll pull it down a little bit in there. So maybe this one I'm going to pull up a little bit. Yeah, catch that edge. And I know somewhere there's some control points in here, so I'm going to pick this one, pull that up. Pull this one up a little more, come back to this one, pull it back down. Since when I adjust one, it kind of adjusts the other one. I have to go through a little back and forth to make that work. So that's hitting right about the bottom edge. Sometimes when you're doing this too, you just have to get yourself kind of in the right position so you can see what the landform looks like when it intersects it. So that's looking pretty good. And I see a little bit of a low spot in here now, so I'm just going to pull that up a bit. So I just come up on it a little bit, even if it's a tad shorter, as long as there's no gap there that you can see that. Now that's a little, it's kind of a little steep coming off of there, but again, for the sake of this model, we wanted to come across here and pull these up a bit. We can bring that slope up a little bit so it's a little more level, and then we come across here, select these, pull them up a little bit. Again, just using my eye to kind of create kind of a nice gentle slope there. Okay, so that's kind of flowing up into the steps there. So that's the process of going through. And now I've got this kind of sloped along the wall, looks pretty tight across the top. I looked at this before, thought maybe I don't know if this should come up or not, but let's pull it up here a little bit. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, yeah, it looks pretty good. So I won't keep adjusting that, but you get the idea. And I'm going to right click on this and hide the points. And now I've got that wall and the stairs. Let's do, oops, unlock. Okay, and so now we've got the steps kind of lined up there. And it looks like they're hitting pretty well. So that's basically the process. It's kind of the same thing we went through in SketchUp. And now we've got that area set, and we've got the wall intact, the stairs intact, and I'm not going to adjust these stairs in this tutorial. I'll probably start again with a different model if I want to go through some of the ladder things, but I can go through on this one and show you how to do the split, because basically once you get to this process, you get the wall figured out there, you get the stairs set. You'd want to set this stairway and adjust the terrain to fit that over here. Once you get all that done and you know everything's basically in place, then you're ready to start breaking this into pieces. So instead of using the project command, you can actually just use the split command, which is right here, or you can type split. So we select the objects to split, that one, right click, select the splitting objects, right click, and so now we just broke that up into those pieces. And I don't know if nope, I didn't break that one up. So one thing I didn't do is I'm going to take this line, take these, and I'm going to use project, project to C-plane, delete input, yes. Okay, so now they're down here with the other objects, and I'm just going to use the line tool. I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm just snapping a line, turn my snaps back on from here to here. And now, I should have done that before, but now I'm going to use the same command. So I'm going to use the, split command. Select the object to split this piece. Select the splitting object, that piece, and hopefully that split this back up into two pieces, which it didn't. All right, I'll have to come back in and fix that. But, let's try it again. Let's do another split. Oh, that's because I don't have this object split. Sorry, my fault, my fault. So let's do split. Let's select this. Oops. Select objects to split. Click on this. Select the cutting objects. This. Okay. So now that's split up separately from this, which we can do. And actually, this overlaps into here, but I'm going to do the same thing. Let's do split. Select this. Oops. This. Right click. Select object. That. Right click. Okay, so now that and this are all separate. So we can apply textures. Oops, sorry. We can apply textures to all those things individually now. And so the only thing we have left to do here is to go down and just going to get these out of the way for now. I'm going to import, well, this is what Rhino's been doing to me. Menus keep freezing. Only takes commands. All right, well, I'll have to finish that in another tutorial because Rhino stopped taking commands. But anyway, you get the idea. I can bring in the veins for these areas, and then I can just use the split command to split these. And I don't have this little line in here either. I have that as a separate, and the circle here. I split that as well because this is lawn inside here and this is mulch outside. But hopefully from this, you know the drill. You just use the split command, import those objects, select this, split it out. And then once we split this, like I have with the wall, later on we can go in there and adjust the control points along here to pull this up a little bit. Since the wall sits up a couple feet, that terrain actually has to come up a little bit. But we can select all those outside edges and just move them up vertically and adjust these control points until we get that smoothed off and fit in there. So anyway, that's kind of the basic process. And now I have all these separate areas that I can apply different textures to, and even right down to the road and the curb, and everything works pretty well. So Rhino is really good at splitting things apart and not having little pieces. That's one of the things, the drape command in SketchUp. It works pretty good, but it's about 98%. There's still always a couple percent that it just doesn't do. Rhino seems to be really good at doing that. In order to create those shapes. And once you get used to it, using the control points to shape this actually works pretty well, but you do have to go through and add some manual lines in order to do that. But like Artisan is a little more free-flowing, a little more organic. This is definitely very kind of more engineered and controlled because you have to do it point by point instead of just molding it like you would clay. But it's still a really effective way to adjust landforms. And all these now should be separate pieces that we can go in and deal with individually. Okay, I think I'll stop this tutorial for now. That gives you the basics of how to do this. Of course, we can take this surface and pull it, extrude it down in order to get the curb height. I'll have to re-import this line in the veins, place that in there, and then it's just a matter of assigning textures to these surfaces, which is basically, take a surface, go through and yeah, it's not letting me go back in here. So I think I'm going to stop now. It's not working quite right, but I'll pull up another short tutorial, just go through applying those textures, a quick way to apply them, planar mapping, adjust the spacing or repetition to get the scale that you want. Even if you just bring in images that we used for the SketchUp model, we can use the exact same images. Okay, that's it for now.